Okay, I'm trying to get that. Okay, it looks like it's started. All right, so I'll move on to the agenda slide. So you'll notice that there may be some small tweaks between today's presentation and what was sent out last week. For some reason, the agenda slide was pushed down a little bit. So that's one, for example, that has been moved back into the correct spot. So you may notice a little bit of a difference between the slides last week and this week. So I'll do welcome and introductions, give a safety moment, and discuss the feedback process, and talk about the IRP recommendations and the system overview. And then I'll pass it over to Ryan Denton for an economic forecast, as well as the residential and commercial customer growth methodology and forecast. And then I'll talk a little bit about design heating degree days, and then I'll pass it over to our industrial managers to discuss the industrial customer forecast. And then Ryan will finish it out with the load demand curves discussion. And then we'll open it up for questions. But if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to stop us at any moment. You can use the raise hand function. You can also just come off mute and let us know that you have a question. If you do have, so we'll go through and do introductions. If you can, just give us your name and the organization you're representing and maybe your job title. But if you also pop in with questions throughout, if you can, just remind us of your name. That way we know who is asking the questions, and we can make sure to track that for the minutes. So I'm just going to go down the list here, and please introduce yourself. So we'll go with Bruce Folsom first.
Good morning. As I try to turn on my camera, Bruce Folsom, I'm a consultant. I'd like to give a 30-second headline. I was 8 years with the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission. Then I joined Avista in the regulatory department for about, 10, 13 years, and then ran the energy efficiency programs department for a while. I retired, and I now have several utility clients. I've been working with Brian's resource planning team for several years. Pleased to meet those of you who I haven't met yet.
Thank you, Bruce. Kathleen. Kathleen, we can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're on mute, but we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. My headset has a death button. But anyways, I'm Kathleen Campbell. I'm a senior engineer in engineering services. I support the IRP.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. Ryan.
Hello, I'm Ryan. I'm a resource planning economist representing Intermountain.
Thanks, Ryan. Nicole. Hey, Nicole,
Hi.
I see you. Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Hi, I'm Nicole Jelenskog, and I'm a manager of industrial services with Intermountain Gas.
Thanks, Nicole. Jason Talford.
Good morning, Jason Talford with IPUC.
Hey, Jason. Kristen.
Good morning, Kristen Neskins. I am with Snake River Economic Development Alliance.
Thank you, Kristen. Darcy.
Good morning, Darcy Nigam, Vice President, Energy Supply with Intermountain, Cascade, and MDU.
Thank you. Rebecca. Rebecca
Hi,
Wildman.
I'm Rebecca Wildman. I'm with Business Plus, and we're in Southern Idaho, supporting for Southern Idaho Economic Development Organization.
Great, thank you. Chris Robbins.
Good morning. I'm Chris Robbins. I'm the Director of Gas Supply for Intermountain and Cascade.
Thanks, Chris. Sean?
Hi, everyone. Sean Keith Lee, City Boise, Director of Economic Development.
Thanks, Sean. Mark?
Good morning. Mark Sellers Vaughn, Upstream Resources and Special Projects Manager with Intermountain and Cascade.
Thanks, Mark. Zach?
Yep, Zach Sowards with Engineering Services with Intermountain.
Great, thanks, Zach. Bailey?
Sorry, it was not letting me unmute. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bailey Steves. I'm an economist on the resource planning team with Intermountain and Cascade.
Thanks, Bailey. Vicky? Vicky Stevens? Yeah.
Vicky Stevens with the Idaho PUC.
Great, thank you. John?
Hi there, John Whiting with Intermountain Gas, Manager of Industrial Services.
Thanks, John. And Eric?
Good morning, Eric Wood, Intermountain and Cascade Gas Supply Manager.
Great, thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining today's meeting, and I'm happy to have everyone here. We'll go on to the next slide. If anyone joined while we were doing introductions, please jump in. I don't think anyone did, but okay, I'm not hearing anything. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about IRPs and the benefits of those. An IRP really is a blueprint to meet the company's firm customer demands over the next 5 years based on various assumptions around growth, around use per customer, around weather, around different price forecasts, things like that. It does provide a frequent update. So every 2 years, we're able to gather 2 more years of information, update our customer forecasts. If our customer forecast from the previous IRP was a little too high, we can adjust that to where it's at today, and then into the future. If there's a reason why the forecast was a little too high, then we can take a look at the model. Was there something that happened that was unforeseen, anything like that, and we can make adjustments to our models to update those and provide an updated forecast for the next 5 years. It considers all available resources to meet the needs of the company's customers on a consistent, comparable basis. And it allows to solicit input from stakeholders. So the IRP, yes, it is a company plan, but it also is better developed when we get input from outside stakeholders. So from the IPUC or from any of the other groups, it really benefits the IRP to get different voices, and we're able to look at the IRP in a much more robust manner. And then it helps to ensure Intermountain Gas will continue to provide reliable energy source while minimizing costs. So you'll hear a lot about optimization and things like that in this IRP. And that's really what we're trying to do, is optimize things so that the customers that we serve, their costs are as low as we can make them, while also continuing to provide reliable service. So I'll talk a little bit about the integrated resource plan process. So what you'll see here in the green, this is what we're discussing today, and this is really the base of the IRP. We really have to know what we are serving in order to serve that resource. So we need to understand the economic overview, kind of where we are today and where we're headed in terms of the economy, and how this could impact residential and commercial customer growth. You'll see later on as we discuss load demand curves and the use per customer models, weather has a very large impact in terms of natural gas usage. And so understanding weather and weather patterns and cold weather events can really impact how you plan for the future and plan for serving customers. So not only do we have to have a good understanding of our residential and commercial growth, but we also need to understand our industrial demand, because industrial users use a lot of gas, and so it's important to understand what our customer base looks like there as well. And those ultimately lead to our load demand curves, which then they provide us information to our distribution system planning, and we can model our distribution system. That way we ensure that we have enough pipe to meet our customers' needs, as well as optimizing on the upstream with the upstream pipelines and contracting with them to make sure we can get the gas to our city gates to serve those firm customers. I'll jump in with a quick safety moment before we jump into some of the larger presentations. This one's on preventing eye strain. So you'll want to make sure to keep your screens at arm's length away. Don't forget to blink. And then there's a good 20-20-20 rule that I like to use and the company likes to share. And that's every 20 minutes, try to look away at something at least 20 feet away for 20 seconds. This kind of resets your eyes. When you start staring at a screen for 2 hours straight, that can really put a lot of strain on your eyes, and you really want to avoid that. Make sure you're mindful of lighting and glare, and then make sure your screen isn't too bright as well. And then adjust your computer monitors properly, and increase the the size of the font if you need to. If you're looking at small letters all day, that can really strain your eyes as well. Okay, and then here's some information on providing feedback. So you can give us feedback throughout the presentation, but if something pops up and you're like, hey, I should have asked this during the meeting, you can always reach out to us at this email address, irp.comments@intgas.com. We also have an IRP webpage where we're going to try to post the video, meeting recording, and presentation as soon as we can. So if you want to go back and watch the video recording because something didn't quite make sense and you wanted to rewatch it, that'll be posted there. And then we appreciate getting feedback as soon as possible. That way we can incorporate it into the IRP. So if there's something that you want us to incorporate, it's a lot easier for us to do that sooner in the process rather than later in the process. If we're into December, when we plan to file the IRP, it's going to be a lot more difficult to us to make changes, because especially with something like the demand forecast, it leads into all these different aspects. And so it would impact a lot of different things that take time to model and build. So the sooner we can get feedback on that, the better. And then the 2023 IRP acknowledgement and IRP recommendations. So Intermountain received the final order, number 36249, for anyone interested in going and looking at that. The commission acknowledged Intermountain's 2023 IRP filings with a couple of recommendations that we look forward to working through. Some of it we have already addressed. So recommend the company to work with staff to implement IRP reporting that includes system enhancement information in future IRPs within 6 months of a commission order. Intermountain did meet with staff, I think it was back towards the end of 2024. And there was some information passed back and forth on that. And I think that'll help us with this next bullet, where we are to develop reports to the commission of capacity enhancement projects that include in-service dates and project costs within 6 months of a commission order. So those kind of go hand in hand, and Intermountain looks forward to putting those together. And then establish the practice of authorizing the company's DSM avoided costs as part of IRP filings and authorize the DSM avoid costs associated with this filing. So we'll look forward to doing that. With the IRP filing, we'll look to try to authorize the DSM avoided cost and the DSM associated with the filing. Are there any questions yet before I move on? Just going to pause real quick. Yeah, Jason.
Hey there, I just wanted to chime in on that last section, practice of authorizing DSM avoided costs. I just wanted to, give a little information on that. That was part of, that recommendation was part of staff recommending towards the commission. But in the commission's findings in that order, they didn't actually direct any of that to happen. So I think that's just something for us to keep in mind as we move forward with how we're handling DSM avoided costs.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that background. That's helpful. All right. So I'll give a little bit of a system overview for Intermountain for if anyone's not familiar with Intermountain. So Intermountain is a natural gas local distribution company, and it was founded in 1950 and served its first customer in 1956. Intermountain provides service to 76 different communities across southern Idaho and serves approximately a little over 433,000 customers. Here's a breakdown of the throughput. So this is the usage, the natural gas usage. And this is about average. It can vary year by year, but residential is about a little over a third, 36%. Commercial is 17%, and then your large volume customers, usually the industrial customers, are at 47%. So you can see that when it comes to, and if I showed this a pie chart as customer count, residential would be probably 90 some percent. So you can see that the use per customer for an industrial customer is much higher than for a residential customer. So that's something to keep in mind when looking at this information. So here's Intermountain Gas Company distribution system. You can see that Intermountain falls in all of Idaho, mostly the southern portion of Idaho, ranging from far east Idaho all the way to far west Idaho. And it falls along this blue line, which is a northwest pipeline. And then you can see the red lines. These are laterals off of the Northwest Pipeline, and those are owned by Intermountain to serve those customers in those cities and communities off of Northwest Pipeline. You'll hear us talk about areas of interest, and this is areas where we focus. So when we model, for example, let's look at the Sun Valley Lateral. We'll combine all of those different towns in this blue circle in these different counties and count those as the Sun Valley Lateral, and we'll focus on that area for our distribution system modeling. And we'll want to make sure that we have enough capacity along that to meet the demand that those customers would have in a peak event. We have 5 areas of interest, and then we lump in the remaining customers in an all other customers. So you see Canyon County, Central Ada, north of State Street. Those are all in western Idaho. Sun Valley's more central Idaho, and then Idaho Falls is in the eastern portion of Idaho. And then regional pipelines. So I talked a little bit about Northwest Pipeline. You can see it coming across southern Idaho. That's Northwest Pipeline. Um, Intermountain also has capacity on GTN, which is this other blue line that runs from northern Idaho. It enters here in northern Idaho, crosses into Washington around Spokane, crosses into Oregon just south of Kennewick, and it can interconnect with Northwest Pipeline. So Intermountain takes gas off of there, puts it on a Northwest pipe, and can transport it. That's based on a contractual. Sometimes actual gas flow may be a little differently, but contractually, that's how the company's system is set up. Yeah, I think that's it for the introduction portion. If there's any questions, please let me know. I'll pause for about 5 seconds. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'll pass it off to Ryan Denton, who will give a little bit of an update on our economic forecast.
Okay, hello, I'm Ryan. I am a resource planning economist representing Intermountain Gas Company. And so for these forecasts, we use Woods and Pool data. And the methods used by Woods and Pool to generate the county projections proceed in 4 stages. First, forecasts to 2050 of total U.S. personal income, earnings by industry, employment by industry, population, household size, inflation, and other variables are made. Second, the country is divided into 179 economic areas as defined by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of Economic Analysis. These areas are aggregates of contiguous counties that attempt to measure cohesive economic regions in the U.S. The third stage is to project population by age, sex, and race for each of these areas on the basis of projected net migration rates. For stages 2 and 3, the U.S. population is a control total for those economic areas and projections. And so the fourth stage replicates stages 2 and 3, except that it's performed at the county level, using the economic areas as the control total for the county projections. Next slide, please. And so we use household size rather than population in our forecast this time around, and future household growth is a key driver for future residential customer growth and is modeled as a function of total population less those individuals in group quarters and general economic conditions in the state. So in brief, good or improving for economic conditions will speed the rate of household growth, where declining or worsening economic conditions will slow the rate. Next slide, please. These next few slides are just some recent historical data, so we can sort of have a past, present, and future timeline for this. The height of the pandemic's impact on the U.S. economy occurred mainly between March and May 2020. Some key events during that period were in March, the U.S. economy began shutting down rapidly. Non-essential businesses closed. Unemployment claims surged from around 281,000 to 3.3 million in just 1 week. And the CARES Act was signed, which injected $2 trillion into the economy. In April, the US economy lost around 20.5 million jobs in a single month. The unemployment rate peaked at around 14.7%, which was the highest since the Great Depression. And consumer spending and business activity plummeted. In May 2020, the economic damage continued, though some states began to rephase openings. Job losses slowed, but the labor market remained deeply disrupted. And so in April of 2020, Idaho, we saw a seasonally adjusted non-farm employment decline of 10.3% month over month, which is a loss of around 79,300 in non-farm employment relative to the previous month. You can see this in the top graph, that large spike down. And also in the top graph, these are the month over month percentage changes in non-farm employment. So you see the sharp recovery, and then it sort of mean reverts back to pre-pandemic levels rather quickly. And the bottom graph is just the total levels. And you see it takes longer, about a year, to reach pre-pandemic trend. Are there any questions? Okay, next slide, please. The growth in the population has been a driving force in the economic growth prior to the pandemic and continues today, though it has slowed a bit since 2021. Population growth has brought new jobs to the state, which helps boost the economy. Total population in Idaho has increased at a robust pace since 2013. And from 2019 to 2021, Idaho actually saw the highest year-over-year percentage changes in population in the nation, with the average being about 2.37% over these years, which is an increase of about 97,500 over those 3 years. And this rapid increase is mainly driven by people moving from states like Oregon and Washington and California that are more densely populated and more expensive. And here we combined Woods and Pool and BLS data, since the Woods and Pool data stopped, the actuals for that stop after 2022. So we just went in and added BLS to the BLS estimates for 2023 and 2024. We see a strong upward trend in growth in this top graph here, which of course means this pretty strong upward trend in the levels in the bottom and total population. The BLS estimates in 2023 are that the population grew by around 1.36%, which is around 26,800 people, and in 2024 by around 1.52%, which is around 30,500 people. And also note that the year-over-year change in 2021 on the top graph, you see that large spike up, was around 2.98%, which was the highest year-over-year percent change in population since 1994. And also note that even though Idaho's population growth rate has slowed relative to recent years, its growth is still higher than the national weighted average of about 0.98%. So it's still growing faster than most states. Next slide. And these next few slides are just some example sectors to show overall trends in certain sectors and maybe some differences in growth among them. So the top graph here shows the total non-farm payroll or non-farm employment year-over-year changes for each month from January 2015 to April 2025. And the bottom graph just shows the total levels. And there appears to be a slowing down due to normalization of the labor market after an abnormally fast post-pandemic recovery. And other factors include slowing wage growth, slowing population growth, falling working age to retirees ratio, and just broader economic conditions, but still strong growth. In the top graph, you can see a slight downward trend in the growth rates, but still positive. And then in the bottom, you see clearly very strong upward trend. And just as a note, this is BLS data, and just going forward, any BLS data used. When we pulled this, the April 2025 numbers were preliminary, so they are subject to revision. Next slide, please. This is for education and health services employment. Again, the top graph is the year-over-year percentage changes. The bottom is just the total levels. And for 2025 so far, we've seen a year-over-year change of 3.9% in January, 3.2% in February, 3.4% in March, and 1.8% in April. And to put that more recent data into perspective, the median growth rate from January 2015 to December 2024, taking out COVID impacts in 2020 and 2021 for the sector, is about 4%. Are there any questions? Okay, next slide, please. And this is manufacturing employment. So in 2025 thus far, we've seen a year-over-year change of 2.8% in January, 2.9% in February, 3.2% in March, and 3.6% in April. Again, the top graph is the year-over-year percentage changes, and the bottom is just the levels of total employment in thousands. And to put this data into perspective, the median growth rate for this sector was 2.3% from January. Year-over-year growth rate was 2.3% from January 2015 to December 2024, taking out COVID impacts. Overall, we see growth still positive, even though in the manufacturing sector, maybe there's a downward trend here. You can see in the levels, there's still strong growth in both population and employment. Next slide, please. And now we move into some projections. The next 4 slides will use Woods and Pool data. So the top graph here is the year-over-year growth rate in total employment. So this is how much total employment is growing percentage terms each year. And the bottom graph is the year-over-year increase in total employment. So just how much it's increasing each year. In this forecast period, Idaho's economy is currently expected to experience an average year-over-year population growth of about 1.05%, with the state's population reaching around 2,114,500 in 2030, and an average year-over-year increase in total employment of around 15,600, adding around 93,900 jobs. And Ada and Canyon counties combined are projected to attain a total combined population of around 868,900 in 2030. And just if you note in the top, the scales of the graph make this decline look more dramatic than it actually is, but it's only a 0.01 percentage point difference between them. Are there any questions? Okay, next slide. So non-farm employment in Idaho is expected to increase on average 1.27% year over year over this forecast period, which is an increase of around 93,200. And some specific sector projections are farm employment is projected to increase on average 0.28% year over year, which is around an increase of around 700. Manufacturing projected to increase on average 0.34% year over year, which is an increase of around 1,670. And construction employment is projected to increase on average 0.16% year over year, which is an increase of around 882. To the right, you'll see just the specific sectors in a summary. Next slide, please. When combined, the transportation, warehousing, wholesale trade, retail trade, and utility sectors are expected to see an average year-over-year percent growth of around 0.66% over this forecast period, which is an increase of around 8,766 in employment. And combining the finance and insurance and the real estate and rental and lease sectors are expected to see an average year-over-year percent growth of 1.52%, which is an increase of around 12,870 in employment. And then again, to the right, you just see a summary of these individual sectors broken down. Next slide. The service industries in Idaho are projected to see the most growth when combined the professional and technical services, education, health and social assistance, state and local government, accommodation and food services, and other services. Employment are expected to see an increase of, see an average year-over-year percent growth of 1.85%, which is an increase of around 57,300 over this forecast period. And this growth in the services industries alone represents about 61.5% of the total increase in non-farm employees over the period. And again, you just see these individual sectors broken down. Next slide. Are there any questions? Okay, next slide.
Aaron, I'm not seeing any questions in this next slide says 10-minute break, but we've kind of moved through this pretty quickly. So what we'll do is let's go through the residential and commercial customer growth forecasts, and then we'll see where we're at after that, and then you may take a 10-minute break then.
Okay. All right, next slide. Intermountain Gas operates across the southern portion of Idaho. Our districts are organized into 5 districts across 23 of Idaho's 44 counties. As you can see by the map, the service territory is only within certain county or certain communities that are within certain counties that cover vast areas. Next slide. And the focus of this forecast for the purpose of the IRP is to determine how the defined areas of interest are projected to grow. And this map illustrates how the areas of interest are organized by county, with the exception of north of State Street and central Ada, which are certain portions of the counties. And in the case of north of State Street, actually crosses county lines. Next slide. And to help capture uncertainty in the forecast, we include 2 different scenarios, a high growth and a low growth scenario. And the base case is just assuming normal economic fluctuation in normal business cycle activity, and is what we use as our best estimate of future economic activity. The low growth scenario assumes a period of slower economic growth with fewer employment opportunities, leading to slower rate of population growth in the state, and thus a slower rate of household growth. And the high growth scenario assumes a more rapidly growing economy, such as what happened in the 1990s and what we have seen more recently. So, I was going to say more. To create the low and high growth forecasts, we use a historical standard deviation of annual customer growth rates. And this helps us capture the natural variability that we see in customer trends over time, and ensures that the scenarios are based on actual historical data and not just arbitrary. This method is also pretty straightforward and easy to audit and reproduce. To simulate a potential low growth scenario, we reduce the base case forecast by a factor that is equivalent to 1 standard deviation below the base growth rate. And then for the high growth case, we do something similar, but it's at 1 standard deviation above the base rate, the base case. And we'll see examples of what those look like in a few slides. Are there any questions? Okay, next slide. We use total number of households and total employment data provided by Woods and Pool. Households are defined as occupied housing units, and a housing unit is an apartment, a house, a group of rooms, or a single room occupied as a separate living quarters. And the employment data include wage and salary workers, self-employed workers, private household employees, and miscellaneous workers. The historical employment data, which is 1969 to 2022, are from the U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of Economic Analysis. And then the household data are based on U.S. Census Bureau data. 2023 and beyond in the Woods and Pool data are estimates. And we moved to using household rather than population, since utilities are at a household level, and thus it's more relevant and useful metric than population. And since the Woods and Pool data was given at the annual level, and we are interested in monthly customer counts, We use linear interpolation to convert the data to monthly values using June as a sort of anchor point between the years. And also during the model selection process, sometimes lagged versions of these were included depending on how it affected model performance. Next slide. So the model selection process involves a combination of using the AICC and the SMAPE, which is the symmetric mean absolute percentage error, on an out-of-sample test forecast period to arrive at a chosen model to use for the actual forecast. The AICC is a statistical measure used to compare and select models, which it penalizes models for complexity. So the more parameters equals a higher penalty. So this helps avoid overfitting. So this helps with the model fit. And then SMAPE is used because rather than something like just the MAPE, since it penalizes over and under forecasting equally and is also easy to interpret since it's in percentage terms. And this helps us with test model accuracy. So using these two, we balance model fit and accuracy on unseen data to arrive at a chosen model. Especially since the AICC can still, or alone can still tend to favor model complexity and still lead to some degree of overfitting, which is why we balance the two metrics with a bit more weight given to the SMAPE, since we are mainly concerned with forecasting accuracy, but we also keep the AIC in mind to prevent it from dramatically getting worse between models. And this is the balancing act of the model selection process. So on the left, bottom left graph, or the left graph, you see these are just examples for Ada County. These graphs are in R. So here we see this is our test forecast period. And the SMAPE for this was 0.19% for the residential, and for the commercial on the right, it was 0.36% over a 2-year forecast. And across all counties and all customer types, among the chosen models, the average SMAPE was 0.46% for residential and 0.94% for commercial. And so first we trained various different models with different explanatory variables, different number of Fourier terms, with a trend component, without a trend component, et cetera, while keeping track of model performance and the analysis of the residuals to compare these models. And this will lead us to a preferred model for the forecast. And the analysis of the residuals during this entire process for each potential model ensures that the residuals are not correlated over time using a Young box test, which we need because if they are correlated over time, then there's some pattern or information left in the data that our model is not capturing. So we could improve our model by capturing that information. And then we also test that the mean of the residuals is not statistically different from 0, because if it is, then you're consistently over or under forecasting to a significant degree. Are there any questions? All right, next slide. So understanding where growth is predicted to occur is our first step in modeling where system demands will occur, which enables a company to plan accordingly. A model is selected for each county and customer type. And so here's an example of what the sort of, I guess, base equation would look like for our model selection process. So customers equals beta naught plus beta 1 times number of households plus beta 2 times employment levels plus a trend component plus Fourier terms with K harmonics to capture seasonality, plus ARIMA terms with both seasonal and non-seasonal components potentially. So beta naught is just the intercept term that may or may not be selected by the function, depending on whether it improves the AICC or not. Beta 1 is the coefficient on the number of households component. Beta 2 is a coefficient on the levels of employment component. And in the simplest sense, the forecast is a sum of effects from an intercept, any trend that may exist, the household data, employment numbers, Fourier terms that capture seasonality, and patterns from the past, which are captured by the ARIMA components. And everything other than the household data, the employment data, and the number of harmonics are automatically selected by the ARIMA model function from the Fable package in R, or you can also manually go in and choose components if desired. And as mentioned previously, sometimes lagged versions of household and/or employment were included depending on how it altered the model's performance. And on the right here, this is just an example graph that's not based on our data at all, but customer counts have an upward trend, and this is just to give an example of what different levels of harmonics in the Fourier argument will do. These just help capture seasonal patterns, and as you increase the harmonics, it helps capture more complicated patterns in the data, or seasonal patterns in the data. So you can see K equals 1, there's one trough, one peak in the period, which is in this case is 1 year, since it's monthly data. And as you increase it to 2, you see there's 2 peaks and 2 troughs, and it may or may not look like this depending on the coefficients and how they're estimated in the model by the ARIMA function, which can sort of help shape the seasonal patterns to best fit your data. And then K equals 3, again, just gets more complicated, more peaks and troughs to help capture even more complicated patterns. And in this case, you can go up to K equals 6. Are there any questions? Yes, I see a question. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I have a quick question about the customer count forecast. The company used 2 variables for the forecast, I think. First one is the number of households. The second one is employment. Why do these variables is so critical for customer forecasting?
So I think the number of households help capture. So if it's growing or declining, then that's going to be very indicative of how many customers the company may or may not have. So if you have a lot more households coming into Idaho, then you could assume that this will boost customer counts since they'll need utilities. And then for employment, I think that sort of goes into the same bucket as the number of households. The higher employment, people are moving there, and it'll be a strong signal for customer count. And if I'm missing anything, please, Brian, jump in.
No, I think you explained it well. I will say that generally, historically, what we've seen is household will be statistically significant in residential forecasts, and then employment does a good job of capturing commercial and industrial growth.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, that is helpful, but I think it's income data and population is another data per the forecasting its customers. So why is the number of household is better than its population?
That's because, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And employment is, why is the employment is better than house income?
So I would say that number of households, as mentioned previously, the utilities are at a household level. So I think it's a more useful metric than population, since you can have multiple or several people in the same household, but only on one utility bill. And then what was the second part? Employment instead of personal income?
yeah, employment, why is the employment is better than household income?
Household income. I think as Brian was mentioning, this has to do with employment is more useful for the commercial customers rather than using personal income. It's on the commercial side, so we're looking at employment in that case.
Okay, yeah, it's understood. So it is helpful to understanding. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And if I can jump in real quick, so we actually ended up using population last year, but we noticed that there's actually quite a big change in terms of number of people per household. And so what was happening is this population number was not tying to the actual number of houses being built. And so what we found is that going to the actual number of households was a little more accurate in terms of housing development rather than population because of that change of number of people per homes. So hopefully that helps as well.
Okay. Are there any more questions? All right. Next slide. And the next two slides are just some example counties that we chose to show. Here you see the green is the high growth scenario. The blue is the base case, and the red is the low. And for all the projections, I'll just all the projected values that I read off are just for the base case. So here you see residential, the average year-over-year growth from April 2025 to December 2030 is projected to be around 1.7%, which is total growth of around 10.3%, which is an increase of around 18,400 customers, resulting in a total of around 197,000 customers by the end of the forecast period. And for commercial in Ada County, the average year-over-year growth over this period is projected to be about 1.3%, with total growth of 7.8%, which is an increase of around 1,026 customers, resulting in about 14,120 customers by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. And this is Bear Lake, so it's just an example of a smaller county. Residential average year-over-year growth over the forecast period is projected to be about 0.7%, with total growth of around 4.3%, which will increase around 54 customers, resulting in about 1,300 customers by the end of the forecast period. For the commercial side, average year-over-year growth projected to be about 0.7%, total growth 4.3%, which is an increase of around 9 customers, resulting in around 228 customers by the end. Next slide. Forecasting the growth in the individual areas of interest is a function of reassigning the counties from districts to areas of interest, which are highlighted in this graph. And of the 5 areas of interest, 3 of them are pretty straightforward. Canyon County, Sun Valley Lateral, and Idaho Falls Lateral, just due to the nature of geography and they fit the county lines nicely. The 2 more difficult ones are Central Ada and North of State Street. So those provide a bit more of a challenge. And so the next several slides are on these areas of interest. Next slide. Okay. And this is the Canyon County. Again, for the residential base case, we're projecting the average year-over-year growth to be about 3.1% over the forecast period, which is total growth of 19%, increase of around 12,200 customers, resulting in around 76,300 customers by the end of the forecast period. And for commercial, average year-over-year growth projected to be about 2.4%, total growth 14.5%, which is an increase of around 700 customers, resulting in around 5,500 customers by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. The Sun Valley lateral. Residential, average year-over-year growth projected to be about 1.5%. Total growth, 8.8%, increase of around 1,050 customers, resulting in around 13,040 customers by the end. For commercial, average year-over-year growth about 0.2%, total growth of 1.1%, increase of around 16 customers, resulting in around 1,510 customers by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. This is for Idaho Falls lateral. Residential, average year-over-year growth about 2.2%, total growth 13%, increase of around 7,527 customers, resulting in around 65,600 customers by the end. And for commercial, the average year-over-year growth is projected to be about 1.6%, total growth of around 9.7%, which is an increase of around 684 customers, resulting in around 7,730 customers by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. North of State Street, average year-over-year growth projected to be around 1.7%, total growth 10.3%, which is an increase of around 6,032 customers, resulting in around 64,500 customers by the end of the forecast period. And for commercial, average year-over-year growth of 1.4%, total growth 8%, increase of around 364 customers, resulting in around 4,934 customers by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. Central Ada, average year-over-year growth of 1.7%, total growth 10.3%, which is an increase of around 6,104 customers, resulting in around 65,270 customers by the end of the forecast period. And for commercial, average year-over-year growth is projected to be about 1.4% over this forecast period, with total growth of around 8%, which is an increase of around 316 customers, resulting in around 4,280 customers by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. And this is the total system customer count. In this case, the average year-over-year growth for residential customers is projected to be about 1.9%, which is total growth of 11.2%, which is an increase of around 44,474 customers, resulting in around 440,157 customers by the end of the forecast period. And then for commercial, average year-over-year growth 1.4%, total growth 8%, increase of around 2,985 customers, resulting in about 40,000 customers by the end of the forecast period. And next slide. Are there any questions? Okay, I think that was it for my part for now.
Yeah. Yep. So
thank you.
Yeah, unless there's any questions, what we'll do is I think we're about halfway done with the presentation. So we'll take a quick, not quick, but we'll take a 10-minute break. And we'll come back at 9 or at 10:12 and we'll continue on with the presentation. All right. It is 10:12, so we'll get going again, and we'll wrap up the presentation. So the next presentation is on heating degree days and design weather. So weather is a key residential and commercial demand driver in terms of usage. We actually have a presentation on use per customer coming up, but that will be during the IGRAC 2 meeting. And those use per customer numbers are impacted by the use per customer level will be higher based on the HDD or the heating degree day. So the heating degree day is used to capture weather effects. Two primary weather scenarios are used in the IRP. Normal HED, so this is your average or expected HEDs throughout a year. So what you'll generally do is take the 30 years of historic information, and that'll provide you with an average HED value for each day of the year. And then a design HED, which I'll talk a little bit in a few slides what that is. So first off, for anyone not familiar with HED or heating degree day, this is an industry-wide standard measuring degrees below a set base temperature, which Intermountain uses 65, as that is the most common reference temperature used in the industry. So for an example, on March 2nd, 2023, it had Boise, it had a daily high of 39, a daily low of 23. So taking the average of that was 31 degrees. So just doing simple math, 65 minus 31, you come up with 34 heating degree days. So normal heating degree days, benchmark for the IRP, used for routine planning, gives us a good understanding of what to expect under normal weather conditions on a given day, a given month, a given year. This allows our gas purchasing folks to go out and purchase the necessary amount of gas for the year. So understanding what a normal year looks like and what normal demand would look like really helps with understanding our purchasing strategies, our storage strategies, things like that. Like I had mentioned, it's a 30-year rolling average of daily mean temperatures. And for this IRP, it's 30 years ending December 2024. So normal heating degree days, this is what it'll look like. So in July, August, typically you'll have temperatures above 65 degrees. And I should have talked about this during the example. We don't do negative heating degree days. So for example, if it's a 70 degree day, if we do 65 minus 70, we get -5. That we just convert to a 0. So typically in July, August timeframe, we'll have almost every day above 65 degrees on average. So you'll see very, very little heating degree days during those months. You will see, though, that on some of our other slides, in the summer, the July, August timeframe, we'll still have usage. This is what we call base load. And that'll typically be your stoves, your hot water tanks, things like that. The appliances not related to weather in terms of usage. So design degree day. This is designed to model the coldest temperatures that could feasibly occur on Intermountain system. If we're able to understand what a design day looks like, then we're able to model that design event, and we can make sure we have enough pipeline capacity, enough gas, enough upstream capacity, storage utilization to ensure that we can meet that load. So It's created by modeling design peak day, and then we model a surrounding week, months. I think it's a 3-month period and a year. That way we understand if we have a really cold event throughout the year or over 3-month period, how's that going to impact storage and things like that. So design peak day is the absolute coldest day planned for in the design year. Intermountain engaged with the Idaho State climatologist, Dr. Russell Qualls, to conduct a peak day study. This study produced a range of peak days for various probability assumptions. The peak day event that was selected was a 1 in 50 years. So there was Monte Carlo simulations and things like that done, and over a 50-year span, the one event that was the coldest was a 78 HGD across the service territory. And then the peak day is modeled to occur on January 15th of the design year. January 15th it's a good time to do this because usually you'll have cold weather in November, December timeframe. And so having that peak day happen later on in the winter period ensures that our optimization we'll have a good understanding of what storage looks like to make sure we have enough storage capacity to help serve this need. And then we have a peak 5-day design. So not only do we have the absolute coldest day, but the day before and 3 days after that event, we also do cold days as well, because generally when you have a cold event, it will be surrounded by cold weather before and after it. Again, this helps with understanding storage utilization. Not only do we have to meet that cold event, but we also have to meet the cold events around it. So again, this is the coldest recorded consecutive 5 days in a 50-year period. And the peak day is assumed to be on the second day. So looking at this graphically, you can see here, we use actuals for December 21st, the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And then that 50-year peak day event, the 1 in 50-year peak day event on the second day, which is the peak day or peak design day. So here's the peak month. The 5 days surrounding the peak day period are modeled after the coldest calendar month in the last 50 years. The current peak month is December of 1985. And this month forms the basis for January design weather. So this will plug in as the coldest month for our design event. And then designing the rest of the year, again, we take the coldest year of a 1 in 50-year record, which currently is October 1984 to September 1985. This period also included the coldest critical 3-month heating period, December to February. So this next slide kind of shows the difference between a normal, which is that red dotted line. This is what we would normally see throughout a year. But it is possible that we see something along this this black line here, where you have cold weather, and then in December you get extremely cold weather. January you get even more extreme cold weather with a peak event happening. And then it'll start to warm up, but it still will be pretty cold compared to what we normally see. So it's important that we not only understand what we'll normally see, but also what we could see in an extreme event. Because we want to make sure that we're providing reliable gas to our customers, especially on extremely cold events. If our customers are not getting gas in cold events. That it could be really bad. They could their homes could freeze over, and we just do not want that. Are there any questions? I've kind of breezed through that. I want to make sure that I haven't seen any hands raised, but if there's any questions, please jump in and interrupt me. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so areas of interest degree days. So as you can imagine, Western Idaho and Eastern Idaho are pretty, and Central Idaho are pretty climatologically diverse. And so you may have cold events on the western portion of the state and not so much on the eastern, or vice versa. And so it's important to develop these unique degree days for each AOI. And then there's methods used to calculate areas of interest degree days to mirror the total company approach. And then for anyone interested, these are the weather stations that are used for HED. So you'll see Boise. I think we have one over in the Nampa area, Haley, Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, the Pocatello area. So very diverse area. That way we ensure we have a good understanding of what weather is going to look like all across our service territory. Okay. I think that's it for the weather portion, the heating degree days. If you have any questions on heating degree days, I'm happy to answer those. If anything pops up later, of course, feel free to reach out. But with that, I'll pass it over to John and Nicole for the industrial services customer forecast portion.
All right. Appreciate it, Brian. I just have to make one comment about Brian's presentation. Back in 1990, I lived in Boise, and I had a paper route during that 5-day stretch that he shared. And a bicycle and a paper route when it's 13 below is miserable. Anyways, so thanks for that, Brian. We're going to talk over the next few minutes about our large volume customer locations, their usage, their market segments. We'll look at some of our forecasting techniques and then some of the results of the scenarios that we looked at. So currently Intermountain has 152 customers, and despite the fact that they are well below 1% of our customer count, they account for about 49% of our sales in 2024. They're a mix of industrial customers, but also some commercial customers, so some hospitals and some universities as well, those types of commercial accounts. As a group, they exhibit a fairly high load factor, meaning they're at high levels of production and usage for a much larger part of the day, as opposed to like a residential customer who, during the summer, for instance, they may only use a bit of natural gas to run their water heater in the morning. So obviously these large volume customers provide thousands of Idaho jobs. They have a significant impact on the economy. Next slide, please. So this slide shows just the total therm sales for our large volume customers, and you can see the upward trend. You see the dip in 2020, and kind of since then you see that the upward trend continues to kind of continue on its path, heading up. That upward trend we'll see, throughout our models. Next slide. So this slide shows total company therms versus large volume therms. You can see the upward trend for both residential and large volume customers. The large volume usage percentage is pretty consistently since 2014. It's been in that high 40s to low 50s% as far as usage over the last decade. So it's pretty consistent. Next slide. So to qualify as a large volume customer, the customer needs to use a minimum of 200,000 therms per contract year. Then they must elect one of 3 tariffs: the LV1 rate schedule, where they're purchasing the molecule from IGC, or a T3 interruptible or T4 firm transport. These are, obviously transportation only. And our contracts, they specify a maximum daily firm quantity, or MDFQ, and they are site specific. So we have multiple contracts where customers have locations throughout our service territory, and they've got a separate contract for each location. If the customer has multiple meters at the same locations, then they're eligible, or they may be eligible for combined billing at that specific geographic location. So on the next slide, as we look at our breakdown by rate class, Brian, that's your cue. There we go. Thank you. Now we can see that our T4 firm transport customers are the largest percentage of both customer and total therm use. And then next slide, we'll look a little closer here at their segmentation. We've got a fairly diverse group of large volume customers. You can see there in the top line, the potato processors, the food processors, the meat and dairy. They make up approximately 74% of our large volume customer therm usage. And here we see the breakdown that was talked about earlier in the areas of interest. You can see that about 2/3 of our customers are in the all other area outside of the areas of interest, but there's still quite a few in Idaho Falls and Canyon County that we're watching. So now moving on to forecasting and scenarios. Most of as mentioned earlier, most of the industrial customers are not as weather sensitive as our core customers. There's also substantially fewer customers overall. So we use a different approach. We use an adjusted historical usage approach, and then we apply it to the therm forecast and then the MDFQ. And the next slide, we start by looking at the previous 5 years of usage. We look for trends both on an industrial customer basis as well as their market segment. And then we weight higher the usage in the more recent years and look at those trends a little closer. And then we apply changes that we're made aware of through our customer interactions. So to help forecast potential new customers, we use industry knowledge retrieved from economic development organizations that we belong to, as well as current growth patterns. So in our analysis, we developed a base case, a high growth and a low growth scenario. Next slide. So for the base case, we started with historical actuals, adjusted for trends and applied customer information. Although many in the industry have seen an increase in the cost of gas, natural gas continues to remain a very competitive source of energy. And as far as predicting what the economy is going to do with inflation, there's lots of obviously concerns about that. We saw that in the economic forecast. So we kept our estimates conservative, and we estimated a compounded annual growth rate of 1.9%. And in our base case, we also included 5 new customers in this case. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see the base case therm usage by segment. You can see that we pretty much forecasted flat. The exception is in manufacturing, it looks like there's some significant growth, and then you see institutional towards the end of the IRP period, you see a little bit of growth there. Both of those, the growth that we see in both of those segments are because of customer expansions that we know are happening, and we've got signed contracts for those. So on the next slide, as we look at the high growth, With high growth, we started out with the base case. We assumed natural gas prices remain low. Inflation begins to contract a little bit, and the economy in general begins to recover. We assumed 10 new customers, which totaled 7.2 million therms by 2030. The additions were mostly in our T4 tariff, and then of those, 3 meat and dairy, and then 7 were just in various segments. In the high case, our compounded annual growth rate was 2.2%. So if we go, you're going to see that if we go to the next slide, we'll see that it looks pretty much like the previous slide. There's just a few more increases in various segments, primarily in the dairy and ag, and a little bit in the other. And then, of course, the manufacturing and institutional are because of those expansions that I spoke about earlier. In the next slide, we'll look at the low growth scenario. We started with the base case forecast. We assumed gas prices would be less competitive. The economy as a whole would continue to be sluggish, and then we would see some decrease in current customer usage, as well as a decrease in new customers coming in to looking for service. Also, customers that were hovering around the required 200,000 therm annual minimum, we removed them. And then we only added 2 additional customers. So for the low growth scenario, our compounded annual growth rate was 1.1%. So if we look at the low growth, it's the same story, flat across, except for manufacturing and institutional, where we see where we know we have some expansions coming. And the next slide, if we look at we'll have the opportunity to look at all the scenarios together. You can see slight upward trend, again, being driven by the expansions that we know that are going to happen, but really a muted outlook on growth. The next slide will just show us this, just a different visual. You see that high growth and base case are very close. We weren't super aggressive in projecting significant growth on the high case. And then the next slide, the forecasted maximum daily firm quantity we used in the projections. We established that MDFQ in our gas service agreements. MDFQ generally follows the estimated therm projection, but it may have a lag with an increase or decrease in therm usage, as changing the MDFQ involves a change in contract, but overall it tends to trend along with the therm projections. So with the MDFQ forecast, we only forecasted for firm customers, since that's what the capacity is. So our LV1 and T4 customers were what we used in the model. So with the base case scenario for the compounded annual growth rate for MDFQ, we put that at 1.5%. And so again, on the next slide, we see the chart. This is in a chart form, pretty much flat, other than meat and dairy, and a little bit institutional, and then manufacturing. We see a big jump, and that's because of the expansion. And towards the end of institutional, you see those 2 little increases the last 2 years, and that again is because of the expansion. So I kind of flew through those. There's a lot of information, but I guess I would say actually not a lot of information, but a lot of charts to kind of show what growth we were envisioning. And with that, I guess I would ask if there are any questions. Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions, so let's move on to our final presentation of the day.
So this is on load demand curves. It incorporates several inputs, which are the residential and commercial customer forecasts, normal and design weather, use per customer, demand side management, and the large volume customer forecast. And the LDC is equal to the product of the customer forecast HDDs, use per customer, subtract demand side management, and add large volume forecast in. And so for the utilization of these, they help us identify potential upstream pipeline and distribution system constraints. And for the resource optimization, it's important for us to understand our demand so that we purchase enough supply and enough storage and know how and what our transportation distribution needs will be. And for storage management, one example is Jackson Prairie requires us to cycle our storage with them, meaning we have to empty it during the heating season and fill it during the non-heating season. So it's important for us to understand how much we'll need in this case for any peak events that occur. So we are properly planning for that. And any remedies for constraints will be identified. And if there are any shortfalls, we'll provide potential solutions in later IGRAC meetings. And note that the load demand curves for upstream pipeline modeling will differ from the distribution system modeling. Next slide. This is a load demand curve for the total company that goes into the Plexos model. We see higher usage in the winter and lower usage in the summer. And this total data, company data, gives us a good idea of what peak events, and helps us plan accordingly, such as acquiring more upstream capacity to meet demand if needed. Whereas in the following slides, we see this data for the areas of interest, and those are used more for distribution system planning. Further note that the rate schedule LV-4 is not included in this total company data, but is included in the area of interest data for the reasons just mentioned about upstream planning versus distribution system planning. And those are the large volume customers that are responsible for their own upstream supply. Further note that these load demand curves have been produced before adjusting for DSM. We're still waiting on those results to get updated. And so the last peak here, or this forecast period, is about 5.7% higher than the first peak event, which is around 310,800 therms higher. Slide. Again, these are just a refresher on the areas of interest. Next slide, please. This is the Idaho Falls lateral. The last peak here is about 6.55% higher than the first peak, which is about 61,500 therms higher. Next slide. For the Sun Valley lateral, we see the last peak is about 4.5% higher than the first peak, which is around 10,100 therms higher. Next slide. Cannon County lateral, last peak is around 9.5% higher than the first peak, which is about 103,600 therms higher. Next slide. For the North of State Street lateral, last peak is about 6.4% higher than the first peak, which is about 52,700 therms higher. Next slide. And for Central Ada County, the last peak event here is about 6.5% higher than the first peak, which is about 51,500 therms higher. And these are just are mainly given to give some insight into how the peak days are projected to increase over time, and allows us to better position ourselves to plan accordingly and show the growth in the potential growth in peak day events. And I think that is everything. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Jason.
Hey there, thank you. I had a question kind of returning to the first slide on this topic. Could you tell me a little bit more about what the DSM load reduction is based off of?
I will have to defer to, I think, Brian for this one.
Yeah, so that would be the demand side management, or the energy efficiency programs. And we'll have a presentation in the second IGRAC meeting. But essentially what we have in the model, so our use per customer models that we have built in, what it includes is energy efficiency programs that have already been put in place. So our models capture that use per customer that's in there and the trend that they're taking with the current energy efficiency programs or the equipment that's in. The DSM portion for the future is any programs or any new appliances that are going to go in. So what we'll do is we'll get a projected energy efficiency savings, which would decline or make future usage go down a little bit. And so that's what the demand side management is.
Okay. So the DSM is kind of a forecasted impact, and then, the impact of existing programs is captured through use per customer. Is that like a actual data amount, or is that an input based on, claimed savings from the program?
Yeah, it's just a data. So we just pull what our usage was on a certain day, and we build out regressions based on the relationship between heating degree days and usage.
Okay.
And so
Right.
yeah, the idea there is that it's already captured. The existing programs are already captured within the use per customer, and then any future programs would be captured by that DSM projected savings.
Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it there and wait patiently for the next presentation. I just remember there was some items on the DSM forecasts and how those estimates are built up in the last IRP. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that carries over into this one. Thank you.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, we'll have a presentation on use per customer in IGRAC 2, and then we'll also have our energy efficiency manager presenting our demand side management savings and all the different calculation and things that go into those in our second IGRAC meeting, which is actually a great segue to this final slide here, which we will yeah, those dates are not correct. Sorry about that. Let me go and find the correct dates real quick. So the second IGRAC meeting will take place in August. It'll be August 13th. I'll make sure that actually, if you go out to our company webpage, actually I should double check that to make sure. But I have sent the request to our IT department to update the webpage, the Intermountain IRP webpage, to include the updated 2025. Yeah, it is updated. Actually going to stop sharing that, and I'll share the IRP webpage for everyone. So you can see here, this is the IRP webpage. It gives a little bit of a background of what IRP is. Talks about the stakeholder engagement process. Anyone is welcome to join these. Anyone is welcome to participate in these. When you come out to this webpage, And you should see right between the IGRAC 1 and IGRAC 2 meeting, this is where the video recording will be posted as well as the minutes and the presentation. So looking here, here's the correct dates for the second and third IGRAC meeting. So second one will be Wednesday, August 13th, and then the third IGRAC meeting will take place Wednesday, September 17th. We do plan on providing a draft IRP. This is something that we did for the first time in the previous IRP process. We provided a draft IRP and asked for feedback. That can be any type of feedback. If you go through it and look and you have some grammatical changes, if that's all you want to provide, that's great. If you look at it and something just doesn't make sense, you can say, hey, can you provide some more clarification on this or more explanation on these slides or these graphs or this narrative? We're happy to do that. It really helps us build out a much better and much more robust IRP. And if you're curious about what may be in the IRP narrative, here at the bottom, this is what was filed in the previous IRP. You'll see the 2023 Intermountain IRP. That's the narrative. And then it also includes 10 exhibits that are different things from the customer forecast to the avoided cost to load demand curves, Plexos inputs, outputs, things like that. So a lot of information in there. And then again, irp.comments@intgas. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at that location. And or if you have any feedback, if you want to let us know what we could do better, what you liked, if there's any changes to the IRP webpage you'd like to see, anything, any type of feedback, we're happy to take that. And just a reminder, the sooner the better for that feedback. Okay. And I think that's it. I'll open it up one more time for questions. If there are no questions, we can let everyone go early today, and we'll meet back up in about 5 weeks, I think it is. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks everyone for joining today, and we'll see each other in about a month.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great information.
Yeah, thank you.